Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. I stood in front of the company's towering glass doors, the building I had built from the ground up. But today I wasn't entering as Jordan Baker, CEO and founder. Today I was no one, a cleaner invisible to the eyes of those who thought they knew the company best. I adjusted my cap, pulled the collar of my worn janitorial uniform higher around my neck, and took a deep breath. Walking through the front lobby, the usual greetings of "Good morning, Mr. Baker" were absent. No one recognized me. That was the point. My disguise wasn't just about clothing. It was about becoming someone the employees didn't think twice about. The smell of disinfectant lingered in the air as I passed the reception desk. It was a world I had overlooked, a space I hadn't truly understood until now. Gemma Edwards, my assistant manager, was notorious for her strict demeanor. I had heard whispers of discontent, but whenever I asked about employee morale, I was given sanitized reports, smoothed over, devoid of any real issues. That's why I was here. Ethan, my deputy, had insisted everything was running smoothly, but I wasn't so sure. Something felt off, and I intended to find out. As I neared the elevator, I heard a sharp voice behind me. "Hey, you, new cleaner, right?" I turned, facing the storm that was Gemma. She was just as I expected, her platinum hair pulled into a severe bun, eyes narrowed like a hawk. I kept my head low, playing the part. "Yes, ma'am," I muttered. Her eyes roved over me, clearly unimpressed. "Well, don't just stand there like an idiot. The executive bathrooms need cleaning. Now, and make sure you mop the floors properly this time. I don't want to see a single streak." I nodded and shuffled off, barely holding back a retort. She had no idea who I was, and that's exactly what I needed. As I pushed my cleaning cart toward the elevator, I caught the tail end of a conversation between two warehouse workers standing nearby. "Another round of layoffs?" One whispered, his voice tinged with fear. "How are we supposed to keep up with all this work?" "I don't know," the other muttered, shaking his head. "They cut our team in half last month, and Gemma just keeps pushing us harder. It's getting impossible." My stomach tightened. Layoffs? I hadn't approved any recent cuts. If there were staff shortages, it explained a lot of the chaos I'd noticed lately. But why hadn't Ethan mentioned this to me? When the elevator dinged open, I stepped inside, my thoughts swirling. The more I saw, the more uneasy I became. Ethan was supposed to be my eyes and ears on the ground, ensuring things ran smoothly. Yet from what I'd overheard, it seemed like he and Gemma were running their own little fiefdom. I arrived at the executive floor, the scent of fresh coffee and polished wood filling the space. As I started mopping, a voice broke through the silence. "Clean faster. I don't pay you to dawdle." Gemma again, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. I clenched the mop handle tighter. "Sorry, ma'am. I'll get right on it." She huffed and stormed down the hall, likely to berate someone else. I stared after her, feeling the tension in my chest grow. This was my company, and yet, the people keeping it afloat were suffocating under the weight of harsh management and impossible demands. I needed to see more, hear more, before I could confront the truth. But one thing was clear. This wasn't going to be a simple cleanup job. The more time I spent undercover, the deeper the rot I discovered. Each day brought new layers of deception and abuse, all of it carefully concealed beneath polished reports and strategic smiles. Today, however, was different. I had a feeling that something significant was about to surface. As I pushed the mop across the breakroom floor, I overheard a conversation between two junior employees who sat in the corner, their voices low but strained. "I can't keep doing this," one of them, a woman named Emily, whispered. "They cut our team down to 4 people. 4, Jake, and the deadlines keep piling up." Jake, her colleague, sighed heavily. "I know, Emily, but what can we do? Every time someone tries to complain, they either get reprimanded or worse, fired." I heard Gemma's pushing even harder now that Ethan's backing her. Ethan, my deputy, the man I trusted to keep this company running smoothly. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Ethan was supposed to be my ally, yet his name kept surfacing in these conversations, tied to the very problems that were crippling the staff. I leaned closer, pretending to scrub a stubborn stain on the floor. Emily's voice cracked with emotion as she continued, "It's not just the work, Jake. It's the way they treat us. Gemma, she humiliates people. Did you hear what she said to Linda yesterday? She called her incompetent in front of everyone, just because she had to take a sick day." Jake shook his head. "I've had enough. I'm thinking of quitting." "No," Emily said quickly. "You can't. If you leave, the rest of us will drown. We need more people, not fewer." I couldn't listen anymore. My stomach churned as I stood up and quietly left the break room, my heart pounding in my chest. Ethan had assured me time and time again that everything was under control, that employee morale was fine. But this was betrayal on a level I hadn't anticipated. I pushed the cleaning cart toward the elevator, my mind racing. I needed to confront Ethan, but not without concrete evidence. I couldn't accuse him without knowing the full extent of his involvement. For now, I had to keep playing the part of the cleaner, unnoticed and unimportant. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Ethan himself. "Meeting at 2 p.m. with the finance team. Make sure you're there." I stared at the screen, anger simmering just beneath the surface. He had no idea that I already knew the truth. I had been blind for too long, trusting him with the inner workings of my company, but not anymore. At 2 p.m., I wasn't the CEO walking into that meeting. I was a cleaner, lurking in the background. Ethan sat at the head of the table, flanked by Gemma, who wore her usual icy expression. The finance team shuffled in, tired and tense. "We need to talk about the budget cuts," Ethan began, his voice calm and authoritative. "There's no way around it. We'll have to reduce staff again to meet the quarterly targets." Gemma smirked, crossing her arms. "We've already identified the departments that can afford cuts. It's the lower-level employees, ones we can easily replace." My blood ran cold. The callousness in their words was staggering. One of the finance managers, a middle-aged man named Peter, cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Mr. Baker." "Call me Ethan," he interrupted. Peter hesitated. "Ethan, I understand the need for cost-cutting, but this isn't sustainable. Morale is at an all-time low. If we keep pushing people like this, we're going to see a mass exodus of talent." Ethan waved him off dismissively. "Talent is replaceable. What matters is the bottom line." That was it. I had heard enough. They weren't just mismanaging. They were gutting the soul of my company for their own gain. I turned and left the room before I could do something reckless. But one thing was clear. Ethan and Gemma were not just incompetent. They were dangerous, and I would stop them. I had always prided myself on trusting the right people, but trust, as I was quickly learning, was a fragile thing. It could be built over years and shattered in mere moments. Today, that truth weighed heavily on me as I navigated the office halls, blending into the background once more as the anonymous cleaner. Gemma's voice echoed through the corridor, sharp as ever. "I told you to have that report on my desk by noon, didn't I?" A timid voice answered, "I am sorry, Ms. Edwards. There was a delay." "No excuses, Linda," Gemma snapped. "You're lucky I don't fire you on the spot." I watched from the distance as Linda, one of the junior analysts, shrank under Gemma's glare, clutching her papers as if they were the last thing anchoring her to this job. My fists clenched around the handle of the mop. I had witnessed enough of Gemma's bullying, but seeing it firsthand, knowing that I was the one responsible for letting this continue, because I had trusted Ethan and by extension, her, felt like a punch to the gut. As Gemma stormed off, I approached Linda, careful to keep my voice low. "Are you all right?" She blinked, surprised that someone, even a cleaner, would address her with concern. I'll manage," she muttered, clearly embarrassed. "You don't deserve that," I said. "No one does." Linda looked at me, her eyes flickering with a glimmer of hope, but it quickly faded. "Thanks, but I can't afford to lose this job. I just have to keep my head down and deal with it." It was heartbreaking to hear. Here was a talented employee beaten down by a toxic work environment, too afraid to speak up because she feared the consequences. I couldn't stand by any longer. As I sat in Ethan's office, watching him spin lie after lie, pretending to care about the company's well-being, I knew I had to act swiftly. His betrayal was rooted so deep that confronting him directly without further evidence would be too easy for him to wriggle out of. He was too slippery, too cunning. I leaned back in my chair, letting the tension build in the room. Ethan was still oblivious to the fact that I knew everything. "Ethan," I said calmly, watching his eyes shift nervously. "I think we need to have a board meeting. There are some things that need addressing, and I want the entire leadership team present." He nodded, clearly unsure of my motives but eager to please. "Of course, Jordan. I can arrange that. When would you like to hold it?" "Tomorrow morning," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Make sure Gemma is there too." "Consider it done," he said, a hint of relief in his voice. I stood up, straightening my jacket. "Good. In the meantime, I'm heading to Chicago on a business trip. I will be back late at night, so make sure everything runs smoothly in my absence." Ethan smiled, though I could see the gears turning in his mind. He thought he had me fooled, that I was leaving him to continue his schemes. But I had no intention of going to Chicago. Instead, I had a different plan in mind. "Don't worry, Jordan," Ethan said, his voice oozing false confidence. "I'll take care of everything." I nodded and turned to leave the office, but before I stepped out, I added one last comment. "Oh, and Ethan, make sure you're on time tomorrow. It's going to be an important meeting." He grinned, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The next morning, I arrived at the boardroom early, much earlier than anyone else. Dressed once again as the office cleaner, I slipped into the room and hid behind a curtain that overlooked the long, polished table where the board members would soon gather. My heart pounded in my chest, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was it, the moment of truth. The minutes ticked by as the board members began to arrive, greeting each other and taking their seats. Ethan entered last, with Gemma right behind him, both of them smug and confident, unaware that I was just a few feet away, listening to every word. Ethan called the meeting to order, his voice calm and authoritative. "Thank you all for being here. As you know, Jordan is away on business, but he's entrusted me to lead this important discussion." He launched into his prepared speech, outlining plans that I knew were designed to further entrench his power while cutting costs at the expense of the employees. Gemma chimed in with her usual harsh remarks, and for a moment, it felt like they believed they had already won. But that's when I made my move. I stepped out from behind the curtain, still dressed as the cleaner, my mop and bucket in hand. For a moment, no one noticed me. Then, as I moved closer to the table, Gemma caught sight of me, her face contorting in irritation. "What's this cleaner doing in here?" she snapped. "We're in the middle of a meeting." Ethan glanced at me, ready to dismiss me, but then something in his expression shifted. His eyes widened, and slowly, recognition dawned. I took off the cleaner's cap and dropped the mop to the floor. The room fell into stunned silence. Ethan's jaw dropped, and for a full 3 minutes, he and Gemma sat there, speechless, their faces frozen in shock as they realized who I really was. I let the silence stretch, savoring the moment before I finally spoke. "Surprised to see me, Ethan, Gemma?" Ethan's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air, utterly lost for words. Gemma, equally stunned, glanced between me and Ethan, as if searching for an explanation that would never come. I stepped forward, tossing the cleaner's disguise onto the table. "I've been here all along, watching, listening. And now it's time for the truth to come out." They had no idea what to say. They had thought they were in control, but the tables had turned dramatically. "I've seen everything," I continued, my voice low but firm. "The way you've been running this company into the ground, the way you've been treating employees like disposable tools, manipulating numbers, cutting costs, overworking them to the point of collapse, all while padding your pockets with the extra profits. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Gemma finally snapped out of her shock, her voice rising defensively. "This is absurd. You're accusing us of what, Jordan? Improving efficiency? We did what was necessary to keep the company profitable." I stopped pacing and locked eyes with her. "At the expense of the people who make this company run. You've abused your power, humiliated people, and driven the workforce into the ground." "Listen, Jordan," Ethan said, standing up, trying to regain control. You don't understand the intricacies of managing at this level. I was just. Save it. I cut him off, my voice like steel. This isn't about management strategies, Ethan. This is about greed, betrayal, and outright cruelty. He took a step back, his face tightening. What are you talking about? I slammed a folder onto the table, the contents spilling out in a rush of documents, emails, reports, and witness statements from the employees. This is what I'm talking about. Evidence of your manipulation, your schemes, your lies. You've been using this company as your personal cash cow, all while hiding the truth from me. Gemma's face twisted with anger. You can't do this. You have no proof. I held up my hand, silencing her. Don't even try. I've got enough to bury both of you, and I will. Ethan, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, tried a different tactic. His voice softened, attempting to appeal to me. Jordan, listen. I know things may look bad, but we can work this out. I've been loyal to you for years. I'd helped build this company with you. That's enough. My voice echoed through the room, stopping him mid-sentence. You've betrayed not just me, but everyone who works here. All for what? Some petty vendetta? Ethan's face flushed red, the mask finally slipping. You're just like your father, he spat. Arrogant, blind to the truth. This company was never yours to begin with. It should have been mine. I took a step forward, my voice deadly calm. And now it won't be. You're both fired, effective immediately. For a moment, there was silence. Gemma looked as though she might faint. Ethan's fists clenched at his sides, his face twisted with rage. But there was nothing he could do. He knew it was over. You'll regret this, Jordan, Ethan hissed as he stormed out of the room, with Gemma following behind him. As they disappeared down the hall, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was done. The poison had been removed. Now I could start rebuilding what they had torn apart. The next morning, that office felt like a different place. The oppressive air that had hung over the building for months had lifted. I walked through the halls, no longer in disguise, but as the leader this company needed me to be. My first stop was the HR office. I had called a meeting with the department heads, and as I entered the room, I was met with nervous glances. They had all heard about what had happened with Ethan and Gemma, and they were undoubtedly wondering what was going to happen next. Good morning, I began, my voice steady but firm. As you all know, we've had some issues within the company, but I'm here to tell you that things are going to change. I saw Maria, one of the junior HR staff, fidgeting nervously in her seat. She had been one of the few who had spoken to me during my time undercover. I caught her eye and gave her a reassuring nod. I spent the last few weeks seeing this company from the ground level, I continued, and I've learned a lot. I've seen the hard work that goes unnoticed, the dedication that goes unrewarded, and the way people have been treated unfairly. There were murmurs around the room, and I could sense the tension easing slightly. From now on, we're going to do things differently. Effective immediately, we'll be hiring additional staff to reduce the workload. I want regular surveys conducted to gauge employee satisfaction, and most importantly, I want open lines of communication between every level of this company. Maria raised her hand hesitantly. Mr. Baker, does this mean we'll have more support from management? Yes, Maria, it does, I replied. I'm not just going to be a name on a door anymore. I'll be here working with all of you, listening to your concerns. If there's a problem, I want to know about it before it spirals out of control. The room was silent for a moment before Brian, one of the senior staff members, spoke up. Jordan, Mr. Baker, I think we've all been waiting for something like this for a long time. I smiled. Then let's get to work. I had learned the hard way that leadership wasn't about sitting behind a desk and issuing orders. It was about being present, listening, and taking action. The shadows of Ethan's betrayal had been cast aside, and the path ahead, though still uncertain, was full of potential.